own movie watching experience. The first movie I've ever seen in my life was The Lion King. It was released in 1994, I think, but in China it was released in 1995, and I was only 5 at that time. It was more than 10 years later that I realized that this story, the movie The Lion King, was actually adapted from one of Shakespeare's greatest works, Hamlet. But at that time, even I was only 5, I was moved to tears by it. So maybe partly because the family relationship was the only thing that I could understand at that time. The attachments of Simba and his parents, the love between son and his father, and that was the only thing I could feel at 5, but still I was moved to tears. The story was about Simba, the son of this king. It's very small. The king of the kingdom. This is the kingdom. And the uncle of Simba, his name was Scar. He killed Simba's father because he wanted the seat of the king. And he drove Simba away and making Simba believe that he was the reason that his father died. So at that time, Simba was still a very little lion, but after a few years, he and his friends, his new friends and his old friends, they came back to the kingdom, and Simba fought his uncle and won the throne of the king back. So this story, I was very obsessed with it. So my parents also, since I was moved to tears, they thought I liked it. So they bought me the VCDs, not DVDs or Blu-rays. It was in the early 1990s. They bought me the CDs and VCDs of the movie, and I played it at home again and again because that was the only thing I could watch at home. And soon I got bored with it, and then when I was alone at home, I decided to watch something else because there was some other discs put on the shelf. So the first one I looked at was this one. But I only looked at the title because it was, back at that time, the Chinese people, they used discs not with the fancy graphs, but something like this. Yeah. It's very simple. And I was a very young child, and I couldn't understand what these two characters mean. It means actually just the Godfather, the word. So I looked at another one. These two characters, at that time, is it small? Sorry. Anyway, at that time I could only recognize the first character. And in Chinese, actually the Chinese translation of Japan has one character that is the same as this one. So I assumed that I could relate this to Japan. And that's something I might understand. So I put it in a disc and assumed that I would like to watch it, but I was wrong. Have you seen this movie? Basic Instinct? I was shocked at the first scene of it, which involved sex and murder. And it was very horrible. So I decided to banish it. And anyway, it was very stunning for a child who was still in primary school. So this is a lesson for the parents not to leave something not suitable for your children alone with them. And anyway, I returned to my world of cartoon movies, and until I started to learn English, which was when I was 12. And in China, there were some movies that were regularly recommended to English learners, including Forrest Gump, including Shawshank Redemption, in which the language was quite simple and quite educative, not like Basic Instinct. So another one I liked was this she was tired with the fastidious life of a princess. So she decided to sneak out from the palace, from the hotel, to enjoy one day's ordinary girl's life. And this handsome man, Joe Bradley, he was a journalist, and he met a girl, and he would like to show the girl around. But secretly, because he was a journalist, he wanted to make a big news of this story, how the princess pretended to be an ordinary girl and traveled in the city of Rome. So for the one Roman holiday, the two beautiful lady and gentleman, they traveled in Rome and had a lot of fun. But also the journalist had secretly asked another of his photographer friend to take pictures of the princess so that they could later make a big story in the newspaper. But at the end of the day, the journalist found that he fell in love with the princess. But it was a story of something like a Princess Cinderella story, because the princess has to return back to her royal life, and the journalist was still a journalist. So at the end of the movie, the two didn't say I love you to each other, but they just simply kissed for once, and then they parted. It was a story not that sad, but a little bit sad, but not tragic, and something that a teenage girl with very sensitive heart and emotions could be moved by. And similarly, I found some other movies like this one, like The Love Letter, which was a Japanese movie directed by Japanese director Shinji Iwai. It's the story about two girls. The first girl was the middle school classmates of the hero. The hero was dead at the time the story took place. And the first girl was the classmate. And the second girl was the girlfriend of that hero before he died. But this story is about how the second girl found out that the boy became his boyfriend just because she looked like the first girl. So the hero in this movie didn't appear quite a lot, but it's the Japanese style of how love took place in a subtle way, without any intense emotions or without any sexual elements. So later on, I decided that if I like one movie directed by a director, I might like the other movies he directed, because one director's movies might bear the same style. So I decided to look into some particular directors, like Shinji Iwai, the director of Love Letter. He has also directed a lot of movies. Actually, I can say most of his movies were about teenagers, and like how teenagers involved with their friends, their boyfriends, girlfriends, and their family, and even the whole society, because some of the movies were about the adolescents with some delinquencies. And another movie I want to emphasize is this one, April Story, which was very short. It was 17 minutes long, and it was about a girl who came to Tokyo from the other side of Japan to go to university. And she actually went to Tokyo because she was secretly in love with a boy who was in Tokyo. And when she arrived at Tokyo, she met the boy several times, where the boy did his part-time work at a bookshop. with the boy or not. It didn't tell us. And the reason I want to emphasize this movie is that in my own life, I have one similar experience as this one. Actually, I watched this movie when I was 14 or 15, but 1 or 2 years later, I got to know a boy who was in Beijing, which was 1,000 away from my hometown. And I was in high school then, but because I found that there were a lot between us we could talk about, I decided to myself that I want to go to a university in Beijing. So actually I succeeded when I was 18, and I got to meet the boy a few times. But just like the movie itself, the story between me and that boy ended with nothing. We just gradually we had lunch, or we had dinner together sometimes, and we went out sometimes. But later, we just stopped texting each other or contacting each other for no reason. And I don't know if same thing happens to everyone, but this movie makes me feel that it's something that is not special about teenage life, but it's something you will always remember for your life, but not to be sad about, because it's just the youth. And another director I like is Hitchcock. He was a master at creating suspense and horror using very not so advanced techniques, because he was at the time when movies were still black and white. But if you haven't seen any of his movies, I would strongly recommend to his movies, but I won't spoil any details about the stories. And it's on another occasion, I got to know that the movie that I thought I would not be interested in when I was 5 was actually one of the best in movie history. It was directed by Francis Coppola, and in 1972, it won 3 Academy Awards, including the Best Picture and the Best Leading Actor. And 2 years later, the part 2 of Godfather was released, and it even won 4 Academy Awards, which was quite an exception for such kind of serious movies. And Francis Coppola was actually at his early 30s when these 2 successful movies were made, and he became quite famous after that. But his life was not easy after movie that sounds so boring, but more than 10 years later, I became so obsessed with this movie that I would say that it's the ever best movie I've ever seen, and I would even doubt if I would ever find another movie that would compare this one. So at this point, maybe I could say that I've reached the peak of the movie I've ever seen, and I started to wonder, how many times have I spent on watching movies? And I did a calculation. If one movie takes 2.5 hours, and if in my life I watched 3,000 movies, that would equal to roughly 1 year in my life. And is it worthwhile for one person to not use such a long time in his life to watch movies, to watch so many stories that it might not be related to his life? Some people say yes, like me, because I think I could learn something, and also some stories could resonate with me. And some people may say no, because it's nothing about the real life, because after all, you have to go back to your real life. It's just like playing video games. It's not, it has nothing to do with the realistic. So, whatever it is, whatever your answer is, I think that even if, like me, I like watching movies, and I would also admit that our final goal in life is to live and to experience. And I would like to use the experience and knowledge and the wisdom I've learned from movies to make my life in future more meaningful, or I could reflect more on my future life. So my final word is, there's such a lot of work to see in future. This is from the movie Breakfast at Tiffany's. It's the song sung by Audrey Hepburn again.